My name is Bailey Morgan. I am 32 years old, a single mother to a bright, curious little boy named Eli. I work two jobs and take on late-night freelance gigs just to keep us afloat. Life isn't easy, but I've built a quiet strength from the pieces that others have tried to break. The night everything changed started at my cousin's engagement dinner. Madison Clark was the bride to be elegant, adored, and practically glowing in a satin dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I hadn't spoken to her in half a year. Not since she cracked a joke at a baby shower about me collecting diapers and regrets. I let it slide, then smiled to keep the peace, but the sting had never left. So when I received the invitation cream cardstock, gold lettering, perfectly pretentious, I hesitated. My mother called 3 times to push me to go. Just show up, Bailey. Smile. Be polite. Don't cause a scene. That was always her advice. So I went for her, for appearances, for Eli. I found my nicest dress, a little wrinkled and a little tight, borrowed heels from a neighbor, and let Eli pick out the necklace. He chose a silver heart, said it looked like his. We walked into that upscale restaurant. White tablecloths, dim lights, wine glasses like crystal trophies, and I could already feel it. The tension behind fake smiles, the polished judgment, the roles everyone had already assigned. But what I didn't know that night was this. I wouldn't leave that room broken. I wouldn't be the one shrinking. The joke would shift. The room would turn. And for the first time in a very long time, someone would finally stand up. Not for a perfect image, but for the truth. Madison and I used to be close when we were kids. But somewhere between college admissions and family reunions, she became the golden girl, and I became the quiet disappointment. She graduated with honors, traveled the world, dated successful men. I got pregnant at 23, raised a child alone, and started over more times than I could count. The difference between us wasn't just life choices. It was how the family chose to narrate our stories. Madison was the achiever. I was the example of what not to become. At the dinner, I was seated at the far end of the long table next to my mother and Aunt Lorraine, who spent the first 10 minutes showing me her dog's Halloween photos and pretending I didn't exist outside of being Ella's mom. Madison floated around the room like royalty, giving air kisses and effortless compliments. She barely acknowledged me. When she did, it was with that sharp kind of politeness that feels more like a jab than a gesture. "You came alone?" she asked, eyebrows lifted. "Just me and Ellie," I replied, steady. "Oh, well, the kids' table is that way," she said, already turning her back before I could respond. My mother leaned in and whispered, "Just keep your head down. You look nice tonight. Not beautiful. Not I'm proud of you. Just nice." As if that's all a single mother was allowed to be. Pleasant, quiet, forgettable. I tried to blend in to survive the evening. Eli sat at the kids' table, coloring spaceships on a napkin and giggling with strangers like only children can. Meanwhile, I passed butter and offered smiles, all while navigating the shallow conversations and polite condescension of relatives who hadn't called me in years, but still thought they knew what was best for my life. Beneath the surface of those clinking glasses and rehearsed toasts, there was a current of judgment. Every word, every look reminded me that I was tolerated, not accepted. The fact that I worked late shifts and came home to bedtime stories and overdue bills was irrelevant to them. I wasn't a story worth telling. I was a warning whispered behind closed doors. And yet, I stayed seated. For Eli, for the girl I used to be, the one who thought families were supposed to be safe places. I kept thinking maybe if I smiled enough, played along enough, someone would finally see me. But deep down, I knew better. These people didn't want to see me. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me small. And for far too long, I had given them exactly that. The moment came during the main course, just after the plates were cleared and the wine glasses had been refilled. Madison stood up with practiced grace, tapping her champagne flute with a silver fork, her diamond ring catching the light like a camera flash. All eyes turned to her. "I just want to say," she began with a polished smile, "how grateful I am to be surrounded by so much love tonight." Polite applause. A few soft cheers. Then she turned her gaze slowly toward me. "I hope," she said with a half laugh, "I never end up like some people single pushing 30 and raising a kid alone." The room exploded in laughter. Not the kind of awkward chuckle you give when someone crosses the line. Real laughter, loud, comfortable, cruel. My uncle, her father, slapped the table and added, "You know what they say, men don't want used goods. That's just how it is." Even my mother gave a soft laugh, covering her mouth with her hand like it made it less painful. I sat frozen. My skin burned. My heart thudded in my chest like it was trying to run. I kept my eyes down, gripping my napkin under the table so hard the fabric crumpled into a knot. Across the room, Eli was still drawing his spaceship, blissfully unaware. I wanted to disappear. Not one person spoke up. Not one voice said, "That's enough." Even those who looked uncomfortable said nothing because it was easier that way. Because I had been cast in this role for so long, the mistake, the cautionary tale that challenging it now would be inconvenient. Madison, satisfied with the laughter, moved on. She made another joke about how Dylan had to give up video games and that he wouldn't survive marriage without her telling him what to wear. The laughter was thinner this time. Some people shifted in their chairs, but still no one interrupted. My aunt leaned in and whispered, "Oh, honey, don't take it personally. Madison just likes to be the center of attention." But it wasn't about attention. It was about power. It was about reminding everyone that I didn't belong. I felt like a ghost sitting in that chair scene, but not human. My value had been reduced to a punchline. My entire life condensed into a single dismissive laugh line. And for a moment, I thought about standing up, saying something sharp, leaving in a blaze of righteous fury. But I didn't. Not yet. I looked around the table and saw the faces of people who had claimed to love me, and I realized their love came with conditions, with silence, with shame. So I sat there, my hands trembling, my chest tight, my mind screaming, while my face stayed still. I reminded myself, I am not what they say I am. I thought of Eli just a few feet away, safe in his own little world of crayons and stars, and I made a promise to myself. I would not let their mockery rewrite the truth of who I was. I didn't know it then, but someone else in that room had heard everything too. And he wasn't going to stay silent. The room was still humming with low laughter and murmurs when Dylan Madison's fiancé stood up. He didn't say a word at first, just pushed his chair back and began walking, not toward the bathroom or the bar, but toward me. Chairs stopped shifting. Forks paused midair. Even Madison stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowing as he passed. He walked the full length of the table and stopped right beside me. "I think they should know something," he said. Silence. Real silence. The kind that thickens the air and holds your breath hostage. Madison blinked rapidly, confused. My Uncle Reuben lowered his glass. My mother finally looked at me instead of through me. Dylan turned to face the room, his voice calm but unshakable. "Tessa," he said, addressing Madison by her middle name. "That wasn't just a joke. That was cruel." She tried to interject, but he raised a hand. "No, I need to say this." He looked around, locking eyes with people who moments ago had laughed. "You all treat Bailey like she's some kind of failure, like her life is something to mock. But what you don't know is that she's the strongest person in this room." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. 2 years ago, Dylan continued, I was laid off from my job. I spiraled, fell into a depression, started drinking more than I should have. Madison told me to snap out of it. Reuben said to stop being weak, but Bailey checked in on me every week. No one moved. She didn't just say kind words. She gave her time. She helped rewrite my resume. She connected me with someone she knew. She even babysat my niece so I could go to job interviews. He turned toward me. "You didn't know me well, but you showed up when no one else did. You helped me out of something dark. You didn't want credit. You didn't expect praise. You just helped." He turned back to the crowd. "So when you laugh at her, you're not just laughing at a single mom. You're mocking the person who helped me rebuild my life. You're mocking real strength." The silence thickened. Madison stood up, her voice rising. "What are you doing?" "I'm being honest," Dylan said, his voice even. "I've smiled through enough shallow compliments and fake toast tonight. But I'm not going to sit here and let you tear down someone good just to make yourself feel bigger." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you trying to embarrass me?" "No," he said. "You did that on your own." A few people looked away. One cousin stared into her wine glass like it held the answers. My Uncle Reuben's face flushed red. My mother sat stiff, her hands folded tight in her lap. Then Madison asked the question everyone else was silently thinking. Do you have feelings for her? Dylan looked at her like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. I have respect for her. Deep respect. And if you spent less time performing perfection and more time truly listening, maybe you'd understand why that matters. His words hit harder than anything else that night. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about values, about what we choose to protect and what we choose to laugh at, about the kind of people we celebrate and the kind we overlook. I glanced around the table. No one dared speak. The judgment that had once been so loud now hung in the air like a fog broken only by Dylan's quiet defiance. And in that moment, I realized something. For the first time in my adult life, someone was standing up for me. Not later in a text, not behind closed doors. Right there in front of everyone. He had turned the spotlight away from my shame and cast it on their cruelty. And I wasn't the punchline anymore. After Dylan's words, the entire room felt frozen in place. No more laughter. No more clinking glasses. Just a silence so thick it seemed to press against every wall. Madison remained standing, arms crossed, face tight with rage. She searched the room for support, for someone to save her from the humiliation, but no one moved. No one backed her up. My Uncle Reuben finally muttered, "He's just emotional. Don't take it so seriously." But Dylan didn't even look at him. He kept his eyes on the people at the table. "You want to talk about emotion?" he asked. "Let's talk about what it takes to raise a child alone. To work 2 jobs. To give your time to someone else without ever asking for anything in return. That's not weakness. That's strength." Madison narrowed her eyes. "You're making this about her." "No," he said quietly. "You already did. I'm just not letting you get away with it." Then he turned to me again. "You didn't deserve that," he said softly. "Any of it." My throat tightened. I wanted to say something, thank you maybe, but nothing came out. So I nodded. That was all I could manage. And it was enough. My mother looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time, there was something in her eyes that resembled regret. Maybe she finally saw what her silence had caused. I didn't expect an apology. Not from her, not from Madison, not from anyone. But I felt something shift like the first breath after being held underwater too long. Dylan didn't touch me. Didn't try to rescue me. He just stood there close enough to say without words, "You are not alone." And in that stillness, in that tension that had finally cracked, I saw something deeper than revenge. I saw recognition. They hadn't broken me. They'd simply revealed themselves. And for once, I didn't shrink. I didn't retreat. I sat taller in my chair than I ever had before. I stood up, not in anger, not in shame, just steady whole. I looked around the table at faces that had laughed at me, pied me, ignored me. I saw Madison sitting rigid, her cheeks flushed, not with embarrassment, but with fury. Reuben reached for his wine, pretending none of it mattered. My mother stared at her glass, fingers trembling. But I wasn't there for them anymore. I turned to Ellie. He looked up from his napkin spaceship with a smile as wide as the sun. "Ready to go home, baby?" I asked. He nodded and slipped his hand into mine without hesitation. We didn't say goodbye. We didn't need to. As we walked past Dylan, he gave me a small nod. Not dramatic, not showy, just a quiet acknowledgement. You were seen. You mattered. I held Ollie's drawing in one hand, his fingers in the other. And I walked out of that room with my head held high, not because I'd finally been defended, but because I had always been enough. They just hadn't seen it. But I did. And that was all I needed. We often talk about strength like it looks a certain way, loud, sharp, undeniable. But sometimes strength is quiet. It's choosing to show up when you know you'll be judged. It's holding your ground when no one else is standing with you. It's raising a child with love when the world keeps trying to shame you for doing it alone. Bailey Morgan didn't fight back with insults. She didn't storm out to prove a point. She stayed. She stood. And in doing so, she revealed more than just the cruelty of a room. She revealed the kind of courage that doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Madison thought the night was hers. that she could humiliate someone to draw the spotlight closer. But what she didn't realize is that real power doesn't come from controlling the room. It comes from telling the truth without apology. And Dylan, by standing up in that moment, reminded everyone that silence can be complicity. But one voice, one honest voice, can change everything. So if you've ever been the outsider, the quiet one, the one they called less than for not fitting their mold, remember this. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your shame. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not shrink. If this story moved you, take a moment to share it. Leave a comment below if you've ever chosen dignity over drama. You already belong. As Bailey stepped out into the night with her son's hand in hers, the air didn't feel colder. It felt lighter, like something had finally lifted. No applause, no grand finale, just truth and the quiet power of being seen. She didn't leave in defeat. She left in full. And maybe, just maybe, someone in that room will think twice the next time they mistake silence for weakness. Because sometimes the most unforgettable revenge is living your truth without fear. Remember, your story matters.